I had lived what anyone would call a golden life. For 80 years Alara Vance believed I was the favorite child of fortune. Born into the sprawling Vance empire, an only child drenched in the unwavering adoration of my parents, my path was never just paved with gold, it was made of it. I slid seamlessly from a privileged childhood into the CEO's chair of our global corporation, my ascension as smooth and inevitable as the sunrise. My personal life seemed equally blessed. I married Leo, the boy my family had sponsored since he was a destitute orphan. It was a match that felt both kind and convenient. He was handsome, ambitious, and understood the world I came from. He never once pressured me about having children, respecting my choice to focus on the business. Instead, we adopted a girl we named Clara. She was a sweet, quiet child who grew into a brilliant, obedient woman. She attended a top-tier university and, under my careful guidance, stepped into the company, poised to inherit everything. My life was a straight, sunlit road, free from the potholes of illness or catastrophe. It wasn't until my 70s that my body finally began to fail, confining me to a wheelchair. But even then, I considered myself lucky. I had wealth, a loving family, and a legacy secured. My 80th birthday was meant to be the final, glittering crown on a perfect life. The house was filled with flowers and the hollow well-wishes of business associates. But as the last guest departed, Leo and Clara did not wheel me to my suite. Instead, the elevator carried us up, past my floor, to the rooftop. The night air was cold, a sharp contrast to the stifling warmth of the party below. The city lights twinkled like a bed of distant, indifferent stars. "What is this?" I asked, my voice thin against the wind. "A nightcap with a view?" Leo's grip on my wheelchair tightened. His face, so familiar and beloved, was a mask of cold contempt. Clara stood beside him, her expression equally alien, her eyes gleaming with a hatred I could not comprehend. "It's for Lila," Leo said, his voice a low snarl. Lila. The name was a ghost from the past. A girl I had sponsored through school, a charity case who had faded from my memory decades ago. Lila? What about her? "If it weren't for you," Leo spat, leaning down so his face was level with mine, "I would have been with Lila long ago. You were so impossibly rich, Alara. Why couldn't you spare a little? Just a little, so she could have kept our baby? If you had given her the money, she wouldn't have had to drop out. She wouldn't have died alone in that filthy rented room, bleeding out in childbirth." The words hit me like physical blows. Lila? His baby? The world tilted on its axis. "I've held this in for years," he whispered, his breath a foul cloud in the cold air. "Just for today. I'm going to make you feel exactly what Lila went through back then." I turned my disbelieving gaze to Clara, the daughter I had cherished, whose every skinned knee I had kissed, whose every dream I had funded. "Clara? How could you? I've given you everything. I treated you as my own flesh and blood. I handed you my life's work." The daughter I had painstakingly raised stared at me with venom in her eyes. "You are not my mother. This is all your fault. You refused to give my real mother the money. If it weren't for you, she'd still be alive. Why should I recognize you as my mother? You deserve all of this." I was stunned into silence. The betrayal was so absolute, so meticulously planned that it felt unreal. Leo laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "Didn't see that coming, did you? Clara is my daughter. Mine and Lila's. After Lila died, I raised her alone. Thanks to you not wanting kids, I had the perfect excuse to bring her home fair and square. You had it coming, Alara. From now on, everything your family built will be inherited by me and Lila's daughter. I'll dig up your family's graves and make sure your parents can't rest in peace. This is the retribution you earned for refusing to give money. Payback for being a heartless person." The final piece of the horrific puzzle clicked into place. 2 days earlier, Leo had sweet-talked me into signing a new will, leaving everything to Clara, citing my age and wanting to protect her from meddling relatives. I had signed it, a foolish, trusting old woman. In the end, there were no more words. With a coordinated shove, Leo and Clara sent my wheelchair careening toward the rooftop's edge. For a terrifying second, I was airborne, the city lights blurring into streaks of gold. Then nothing. The darkness that followed was not peaceful. I was aware of my own end, of my ashes being unceremoniously tossed into a stinking drainage ditch. I felt the violation as they desecrated my parents' graves, fulfilling Leo's vile promise. A single burning thought consumed whatever was left of my consciousness. If I could do it over, they wouldn't get a single cent from me. I'd like to see whether the two of them could even scrape together enough money to buy baby formula. I awoke with a jolt, my heart hammering against my ribs. The air was not cold and final but warm and thick with the smell of chalk dust and adolescent perfume. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. I was slumped at a desk, my hands, smooth, young, and unblemished by age, clutching the edges of a textbook. I was in a classroom. Disoriented, I looked around. Teenagers in uniforms chatted and laughed, their faces fresh and unfamiliar. Clock on the wall told me it was just after 2 in the afternoon. My body thrummed with a vitality I hadn't known in decades. This wasn't the feeble shell of an 80-year-old. This was the body of a girl. A memory, sharp and clear, sliced through the fog. The rooftop. Leo's sneer. Clara's hatred. The fall. I've been reborn. The realization was not a gentle dawn but a thunderclap. I looked at the date on a discarded newspaper on a nearby desk. It was a day I remembered. The first semester of my senior year of high school. Over 60 years in the past. A strange duality settled over me. The mind was that of Alara Vance, an octogenarian who had lived a full life and suffered a brutal betrayal. But the spirit, the raw driving force, was that of a furious young woman, tempered by the knowledge of what was to come. My past life's experiences were a heavy, bitter sediment in my soul, but this young body's hormones and energy were a potent, clarifying filter. I was both the wise, wounded elder and the vengeful youth. The bell rang for break, shattering my reverie. Students spilled into the hallway. Moving on autopilot, I slipped out, my legs strong and sure beneath me. I found a payphone at the end of the corridor, my fingers trembling as I dialed the number I knew by heart. "Mom," I said, my voice a young, clear version of my own. "Alara? Sweetheart, is everything all right? You sound strange." My mother's voice, alive and vibrant, brought a lump to my throat. In my previous life, their graves had been dug up on the orders of the man I called my husband. "I'm fine, Mom. But I need you and Dad to do something for me right now." "No questions." "What is it, darling?" "You know you can tell us anything. I need you to stop all financial support for Leo. And for Lila. Effective immediately. Cancel all the transfers, revoke the tuition payments. Everything." There was a stunned silence on the other end. "Alara, why? Leo is practically part of the family. And Lila is a good student, she..." "Please, Mom," I insisted, my voice firm, belying the storm inside me. "Trust me on this. It's important. It's about our family's safety. I can't explain right now, but you have to do this." My parents, for all their wealth and power, had always been fiercely protective. Hearing the unshakable conviction in my voice, my mother relented. "All right, sweetheart. If you feel that strongly about it, I'll call the bank and the school right now. Your father will handle it." "Thank you," I breathed, the tension in my shoulders easing slightly. The first domino had been pushed. "Are you sure you're not being bullied?" My father's voice came on the line, gruff with concern. "If anyone is giving you trouble, you tell me. You don't have to endure anything alone." Hearing his voice, so full of love and strength, made the anger surge anew. In my previous life, I had misjudged people so catastrophically that even in death, I had brought dishonor and desecration upon my parents. Never again. "I'm fine, Dad. I'll handle it myself." Just remember to cut off their funding. I hung up, leaning my forehead against the cool metal of the phone booth. The deed was done. The golden leash that had kept Leo and Lila tethered to me and ultimately led to my doom had been severed. I returned to class, the familiar surroundings now a battlefield. I was playing a game of chess where I was the only one who knew all the moves in advance. Calm, strategic mind of my 80-year-old self was now housed in the body of a 17-year-old heiress. It was a formidable combination. That afternoon, a head popped into the classroom. "Alara, someone's looking for you outside." Cold smile touched my lips. Right on schedule. I walked to the doorway and there she was. Lila. She was wearing our school uniform, the pleated skirt doing little to hide the slight but unmistakable swell of her belly. Her eyes, wide and doe-like, darted around nervously before settling on me. She looked every bit the victim. "Alara," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I need to talk to you. Can we go somewhere no one's around?" A single perfect tear traced a path down her cheek. In my last life, I had agreed, led by pity and a sense of responsibility. We had gone to a secluded corner of the library, and when she later dropped out, the rumors had spread like wildfire. Alara Vance bullied a pregnant classmate into leaving school. It had been a stain on my reputation for years, later dug up by business rivals to tarnish the company. This time, I would not be playing the villain in her tragedy. "Sorry," I said, my voice loud and clear, carrying down the hallway. "I'm not interested in talking to you." I turned to go back to my seat. Don't go. Please." Her voice cracked with a sob. And then, with a dramatic flourish, she dropped to her knees, her hands clutching at my skirt. "I'm begging you." The hallway fell silent. All eyes were on us. Perfect. I raised my voice, projecting panic and innocence. "Help. Someone's trying to guilt-trip me. My God, there's even people faking victimhood in high school now? I haven't done a thing. Hurry up and get a teacher. Someone's trying to set me up." My performance had the desired effect. The murmurs started immediately. A few of my classmates, children of other wealthy families who knew me, stepped forward. "Lila, Alara's family is rich, sure, but that's no reason for you to act like this." Hearing the whispers, Lila's face went pale. "I'm not. It's not like that. I just wanted to ask her for help." I took the chance to pull my skirt free from her grip and step back, putting a safe distance between us. The last thing I needed was for her to claim I'd pushed her and caused a miscarriage. "If it's not like that, then stand up," I said coolly. "Who asks for help while kneeling? Looks to me like you're trying to frame me." Reluctantly, humiliated, Lila got to her feet. Her eyes still brimmed with tears, the picture of pitiful grace. "Well," I prompted. "If you want my help, then say it." She glanced at the growing crowd of onlookers, her lips sealed. "Come on, say it," someone jeered. "What? Cat got your tongue." "Yeah, what could be so bad you can't say it in front of everyone?" I held up a hand. "Shut it, all of you," I told them sharply. "Keep talking and she'll drop to her knees again, and then we'll all get accused of bullying her. Don't watch the show so hard you end up part of it." The group fell quiet, but the judgment in their eyes was now directed squarely at Lila. They saw her performance for what it was. When she still didn't speak after a long moment, I turned to leave once more. This finally broke her silence. Can you give me some money?" she blurted out. "Just lend it to me. I just need a few $100,000. Collective gasp rippled through the hallway. A few $100,000? It was an astronomical sum for a teenager. "And why should I give it to you?" I asked, my tone flat. "Because to you, a few $100,000 is just a month's pocket money," she cried, the pitiful act returning. "Why can't you lend it to me?" "Yes, I have money," I replied, my voice echoing in the silent corridor. "But why should I just hand it over to you for no reason?" She clung to her script. If you don't give me the money, I won't take the college entrance exam. Then all the money you've given me before will have been for nothing. I laughed, a short, humorless sound. The same threat, delivered with the same pathetic entitlement. My sponsorship was an act of kindness. Whether you take the exam or not is none of my business. If you don't need it, I'd rather give it to someone who truly does. At least to someone who wouldn't throw away their future by getting pregnant before marriage. The onlookers stared, their expressions a mixture of shock and dawning understanding. My friend Chloe glanced at me with a smirk. Elara, how'd you end up sponsoring an idiot? An idiot's one thing, I said dryly. But this idiot's also trying to pin something on me. Lila seemed to take offense, her pitiful mask slipping for a second. How can you insult me like that? So what if you have money? Who cares about your money? Fine, I said lightly. Then I'll stop sponsoring you altogether. Since you look down on me, I'll give the money to someone who actually needs it, won't I? You can't do that. That money is mine, she shouted, her true colors flashing. I smiled and hooked my arm through Chloe's. Tell me, what do you think about turning her living expenses into a scholarship fund instead? Chloe thought for a moment. Count me in. Our school was a prestigious private academy, full of the children of the elite, but it also admitted a number of poor, high-achieving students on scholarship. My parents had taught me empathy and the importance of charity, and I had used my allowance to sponsor dozens of them. Most people in the school knew about it. But Rachel had mistaken my kindness for weakness, expecting me to fund her disastrous life choices. She grew frantic. No, you're bullying me. That money is mine. You can't give it to someone else. I ignored her tantrum. All right, then. Stop making a scene. Tell me why you need the money and I'll think about it. You say you need it, so say it. She fell quiet, her eyes darting nervously. Finally, as if she'd made up her mind, she blurted out the truth for all to hear. Because I'm pregnant. I need money to raise the baby. I'm not asking for much, just a few $100,000 so I can give birth. I'll be grateful to you forever. Crowd collectively gasped, their eyes dropping to her stomach. Chloe gave my shoulder a playful pat. Elara, you really don't check who you sponsor, do you? You'd be better off giving the money to me. At least I wouldn't get knocked up and then come running to you to raise the kid. I knew this was something she'd tease me about for the rest of my life. I told you, give me the money now, Rachel insisted, her voice shrill. Seeing the crowd murmuring, she looked like she wanted to flee, but desperation kept her rooted. You said you'd think about it. Thinking about it means you'll give it, right? No, I said flatly. Her face darkened. I already told you why. How can you refuse? I'm pregnant. I need money. How is a girl like me supposed to raise a child without it? I nearly laughed from sheer exasperation. Don't pin your pregnancy on me. I'm not the one who got you pregnant. Why aren't you asking the baby's father for money? What, is the baby mine now? In my past life, I had urged her to end the pregnancy, but she had refused, calling the baby the crystallization of her love. She had chosen to drop out, move into a slum, and had ultimately died, leaving her child to become my adopted daughter. This time, I would not be raising her child. I would not be providing the stage for their tragic play. You're too much, she cried. How can you humiliate me like this? You're just jealous of me. That's why you won't help. Chloe snapped back for me. Girl, if your brain's got problems, get it checked. You're talking about having a baby when you can't even feed yourself. What's the kid supposed to eat? Air. Another classmate chimed in. Yeah. And jealous of what exactly? Jealous that you're in high school, pregnant before marriage with a deadbeat baby daddy and now begging your sponsor for money to have the kid. Just then, as if summoned by the drama, he arrived. Leo. He pushed through the crowd, his face a thundercloud of righteous anger. He grabbed Lila's hand, stepping in front of her like a knight shielding a damsel, and glared at me as if I were the source of all evil. And in that moment I saw it. The look in his eyes wasn't just that of a teenage boy. It was the cold, calculating, and deeply resentful gaze of the man who had pushed me off a rooftop. He had been reborn, too. The game had just become infinitely more interesting. "Samantha," Leo said, his voice dripping with a venom that was far too old for his 17-year-old face. "How can you be so cruel? Lila's just a weak girl, and you're ganging up on her with a whole crowd. This is too much. You're bullying her. Do you have no conscience?" The bystanders, who had only been there for the spectacle, didn't take kindly to that. "Are you out of your mind?" one of them shot back. "She's the one who got pregnant out of wedlock, then came to Samantha asking for money, acting all pitiful like we were bullying her." "Yeah, what's wrong with your eyes and ears?" another added. "Didn't you hear her just say she's trying to guilt-trip people? She's the one doing the guilt-tripping. We're just here watching, not doing a thing." I crossed my arms, meeting Leo's glare with a cool, detached amusement. "You don't know a damn thing about what's going on, yet you jump in to accuse me. Why are you protecting her so much? Don't tell me you're the baby's father." Leo's expression darkened, a flicker of the entitled man he would become warring with the powerless boy he now was. He had probably never been scolded so directly in his previous pampered life. Hearing those words, his chest puffed out with a pathetic bravado. He grabbed Lila's hand. "That's right. I am the baby's father, Samantha," he declared, as if it were a badge of honor. "You'd better hand over the money or don't blame me for not being polite." A slow, deliberate smile spread across my face. "Oh, you're going to rob me now? Listen to yourself." "What? You think I want you to like me or something? Don't flatter yourself. You're crazy. When did I ever like you?" I shot back, erasing any fantasy he might have harbored about my past affections. "And why are you asking me for money? Are you begging? If you've got so much pride, raise the kid yourself. You're the father. Why aren't you paying?" Leo froze, the reality of his situation dawning on him. Then he puffed himself up again. "I don't need your money. I can support both her and the baby just fine." "Good," I said coolly. "Then rest easy. I'm cutting off your sponsorship, too." He blinked, clearly taken aback. Decades of being financially coddled had made him forget the fundamental truth. From elementary school onward, I had been his benefactor. His tuition, his clothes, his pocket money, it had all flowed from my family's coffers. Even the funds he'd planned to use to play house with Lila in our previous life had come from the generous monthly allowance I deposited into his account. Without it, he'd be struggling to buy a meal next month. I saw the flicker of panic in his eyes. But when he glanced back at Lila, who was looking at him with tearful admiration, he forced himself to act tough. "Don't give it. I'm a grown man. Like, I need your money. I'll just get a job to support her and the baby." I clapped slowly, the sound echoing in the hallway. "Touching. Let's see how long this so-called love lasts once it runs into grocery bills and utility payments." Just then, a teacher arrived, drawn by the commotion. After a few sharp questions, she took both a weeping Lila and a fuming Leo away. The show was over for now. Later, their parents were called in. The fallout was swift and brutal. Lila's parents, humiliated and furious, slapped Leo's mother several times right outside the principal's office. They dragged Lila out, demanding she get an abortion, but she refused, screaming that she would rather sever ties with them than give up her love. Her parents, hearts broken and faces shamed, swore they would never care about her again. Leo's father had died when he was young, and his mother had worked herself to the bone, cleaning offices and taking in sewing to raise her son, pinning all her hopes on him. When she learned that her brilliant boy had gotten a girl pregnant in high school, throwing away the full-ride scholarship my sponsorship had practically guaranteed, the shock and rage were too much for her weak heart. She collapsed on the spot and died almost instantly. After her funeral, Leo, unshaven and wild-eyed, stormed into my classroom. "Was this on purpose?" he shouted, pointing a trembling finger at me. "It's all your fault my mom died. I'm telling you, I'm never breaking up with Lila. My mom's gone, and you owe me at least $2 million in compensation, not a cent less." The sheer, unhinged audacity of it almost took my breath away. "You're insane," I said flatly. "Don't you deny it," he snapped. "If it weren't for you, my mom wouldn't have known. It's all because of you." I saw the teacher coming down the hall and didn't bother arguing, simply letting them drag him away, his screams of injustice fading down the corridor. Leo and Lila both seemed to thrive on the narrative that the whole world was against their epic love, that they were tragically right and everyone else was monstrously wrong. They relished the feeling of fighting for their love against the world. Well, that had nothing to do with me. If they wanted to keep it up, fine. I asked my parents for a few discreet bodyguards. Leo tried to confront me once after school, but he was intercepted before he could get within 20 feet of me. With no source of income left, the two lovebirds had to face the cold, hard reality of work. Lila was too physically weak for any kind of heavy labor, and Leo, playing the gallant protector, couldn't bear to see her struggle. So he worked alone, juggling a series of low-wage part-time jobs to support them both. First, he barely managed, his grades plummeting as he struggled to stay awake in class. But as Lila's pregnancy progressed, the doctor recommended better nutrition. She couldn't survive on instant noodles and cheap bread, and there were also various medical checkup costs, a few hundred here and there. Before long, the expenses of Lila's pregnancy far exceeded what Leo could earn from his meager earnings. The pressure mounted. The arguments began. In the end, he made the choice he thought would solve everything. He dropped out of school altogether to work full-time and support his burgeoning family. He was convinced that with his talent and memories from his past life, he could easily land a high-paying job or make a fortune through clever investments. But he had forgotten a crucial detail. Right now, he was just an underage high school dropout with no degree, no connections, and no resources. He dreamed of investing in the promising tech startups he remembered from our previous life, but soon realized he had no capital, no contacts, and no way to get a foot in the door. With nothing to work with, his grand ambitions crumbled to dust. He was reduced to manual labor, hauling boxes and washing dishes, scraping together just enough money to keep a roof over their heads, all the while dreaming of the day he would make a comeback and make me pay for everything. Then, just days before the college entrance exam that would have been their ticket out, Lila went into labor. This time Leo, remembering the tragedy of her death, had prepared in advance and took her to the hospital. Both mother and child were safe. But Lila, of course, missed the exam entirely. And with the birth of their daughter, whom they named Iris, their troubles had only just begun. The baby Iris was a demanding, fragile thing. In my last life, Leo had hired a nanny, and I had later taken the child in, providing the best of everything. But now, without money, they had to do everything themselves. Since Leo was working all hours, the relentless burden of childcare fell entirely on Lila. Lila was still just a girl herself, a teenager who had romanticized motherhood without understanding its brutal, unglamorous reality. No one had ever taught her how to be a mother. She had to figure everything out on her own through sleep-deprived, tear-filled nights. The baby cried incessantly, and every couple of hours, little Iris needed feeding and a diaper change, leaving Lila no time to rest, no moment for herself. During her postpartum month, Lila had no one to care for her. To save on medical costs, Leo had checked her out of the hospital early. Her body, deprived of proper rest and nutrition, never recovered properly. She developed a host of chronic issues, back pain that flared up whenever she sat for too long, and other more humiliating postpartum problems that she could never bring herself to speak of. While scouring the internet for childcare tips, she inevitably saw posts from other new mothers, women surrounded by doting partners and supportive parents living in comfortable homes, their biggest worry being which organic baby formula to choose. Their lives were a stark, painful contrast to her own, facing poverty and exhaustion alone, having to ration her baby's diapers, counting every penny just to get through the week. One day, her phone, a cheap prepaid model, buzzed. It was an old friend from school. "Lila, I've got my own phone now. How have you been lately?" "Guess what? I got into college, a bachelor's program. My mom finally agreed to buy me a phone and even gave me a few thousand to go travel and relax. So I'm only just now contacting you. Want to come along? Oh, by the way, you're such a good student. What university did you get into? I heard your school has this program where the top 10 students get their entire tuition covered and even get a cash bonus. You're always in the top few, right? I'm so jealous. You don't even have to pay your own way." Lila couldn't answer a single question. She mumbled a vague excuse and hung up under her friend's puzzled tone. She sat on the floor of their shabby apartment, the sounds of the city filtering through the thin walls. Her old friends had just finished their exams, enjoying their long vacations, dreaming about college life and the freedom that awaited them. She, on the other hand, hadn't even taken the exam. Felt like everyone else was sprinting happily toward a bright future while she was trapped in a miserable dead-end life with a screaming baby and a resentful boyfriend. A life with no future. She started to regret it. Was having this baby the right choice? When faced with the noisy, demanding child, she no longer felt the rush of maternal affection, only a growing, gnawing resentment. She began to think the baby had ruined her life. If not for Iris, she could be happily preparing for college like everyone else her age. She had been in the top 10 of her grade. She could have gotten into a great university, found a good job, had a real future. She started imagining, what if I didn't have this baby? What if I had never met Leo? What if I were still in school? But life had to go on, and poverty always breeds friction. The arguments with Leo became a daily ritual. They were no longer about love and dreams, but about money and survival. One day, Leo came home from a double shift, exhausted and reeking of grease from the kitchen he worked in. He found Lila looking at a cheap new blouse she had bought from a thrift store. "I'm working my ass off out there to make money and you just throw it away," he snarled, his voice rough with fatigue. "Don't you already have clothes? Why do you need to buy new ones?" Lila shot back, her own frustration boiling over. "What's that supposed to mean? I just bought one piece of clothing. Can I even do that? I haven't bought anything for myself in months. And besides, my body's changed since I had the baby. The old clothes didn't fit anymore, so I bought new ones." "They don't fit?" "That's just an excuse," Leo shot back, parroting words he'd probably heard in his past life directed at me. Hearing that, Lila's anger flared. "You're only treating me like this because I had your baby. You weren't like this before. You promised you'd treat me well. I gave up the college entrance exam for you. If it weren't for you, I'd be getting ready to go to university right now." Leo got even angrier. His grades had been good, too. And with the memories from his previous life, he felt like Lila owed him. After all, she wasn't the only one who had given things up. He had given up being with me, given up a place at a prestigious university, given up the life of wealth and privilege he'd once had. The more he thought about it, the more furious he became. "Yeah, I am doing this on purpose," he sneered, the mask of the loving boyfriend finally slipping completely. "If you don't like it, you can leave. But where would you go? Your parents already disowned you, and you've got no money. Go on, try it. See if you don't come crawling back in less than a day." Lila couldn't believe the man she loved could speak to her like that. Crying, she ran back to the single bedroom, slammed the door and covered her ears, trying to block out the sound of the baby crying outside and the sound of Leo throwing things in the kitchen. But she stayed. She had nowhere else to go. Later, Lila told Leo she wanted to repeat her senior year and take the college entrance exam. He refused outright. "If you go back to school, who's going to take care of the baby?" he demanded. In the end, she didn't go. Her dream of an education died, replaced by the grim monotony of diapers and debt. In her painful, isolated life with no one to understand her, Lila found a dangerous escape. She started spending her evenings at a friend's apartment where people played cards for money. First, it was just casual, a way to pass the time and feel a flicker of excitement. But later, through these friends, she got into real gambling. She secretly took money from the grocery budget Leo gave her to play. She lost at first, but thinking she'd win it back in just one more round, she ended up winning a small pot. The rush was addictive. And from then on, she couldn't stop. Their love, once a fiery rebellion, deteriorated into a bitter codependency, replaced by constant arguments over missing money and neglected responsibilities. In this life, their daughter's name was Iris, as Leo had wanted in his heart. He thought he'd gotten his wish, living with his biological child and the ghost of the woman he claimed to love. But Lila didn't like the baby. She saw Iris not as a daughter, but as the chain that bound her to this miserable existence, and she had no interest in caring for her. Even feeding Iris depended entirely on Lila's mood. The baby only survived thanks to the fractured memories from her past life and Leo's sporadic care when he was home. Lila didn't understand why Leo was so attentive to Iris, but she didn't care. So long as he kept bringing home money for her to gamble with, she could tolerate it. All the money Leo earned, every sweaty, hard-earned dollar, went straight into Lila's gambling fund, with barely a pittance spent on their child. And Leo, meanwhile, had long been thinking about dumping Lila and coming to beg for my forgiveness. He was already dreaming of a way back into my good graces, so he could return to being my pampered husband. He figured that since I had no biological children, I'd have to adopt Iris, and she'd inherit my company. Out of love for the child, he reasoned, I'd have to forgive him, and then all the wealth and glory would be his again. But Iris, the key to his plan, didn't want to come to me. She was determined to stay with Lila. With memories from her past life, she remembered that Lila had died young giving birth to her. Combined with Leo's lifelong teachings about her saintly real mother, she had built up an idealized, perfect image of Lila in her mind. She believed none of my efforts for her in our previous life could compare to the pure, unconditional love Lila would have given her, and that I had only ever raised her for the sake of having an heir. In her mind, Lila truly loved her. And if Lila had lived, she would have been a gentler, more loving mother than I could ever be. So in this life, at the start, Iris clung to Lila and refused to leave, holding very high expectations for her. She was in for a devastating awakening. Iris's devotion to her biological mother was a fortress built on a foundation of grief and Leo's poisonous lies. In her mind, Lila was a tragic angel, a figure of pure love whose life was cut short by my callousness. She believed that in this new life, she could finally experience that perfect, unconditional maternal love she had been denied. Reality, however, was a brutal wrecking ball. Lila's actions shattered those illusions completely. Not only did she fail to care for Iris, but when she lost at gambling, she would take her frustration out on the child. The mother Iris had fantasized about was replaced by a haggard, bitter stranger who saw her as a burden. "It's all because of you, you little brat," Lila would snarl, her breath smelling of cheap beer, her eyes glazed with loss and resentment. "That I've ended up like this. If it weren't for you, I'd be a top student. Why would I have to gamble to make money? Why aren't you dead yet?" Iris, trapped in the body of a small child, could only endure the abuse in silence. She was just a little girl, but behind her eyes was the consciousness of my former adopted daughter, Clara. She still held on to a shred of hope, convinced that she must be the problem. She told herself that if she just tried harder, was quieter, more helpful, her mother would see her love and start to like her, start treating her well. But it never happened. No matter how obedient Iris was, Lila still saw her as the anchor dragging her down. One time, Iris developed a high fever, her small body shaking with chills. She stumbled into the main room where Lila was counting a few crumpled bills. "Mom," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "I don't feel good. Can you buy me some medicine?" Lila didn't even look up. "Get lost. You're faking it. So what if you have a fever? Just tough it out. It'll pass." she snapped before storming out, heading to a clandestine card game, leaving her sick child alone. In the end, it was Leo who came home hours later and found Iris delirious on the floor. He scooped her up and took her to a free clinic, his face a mask of grim exhaustion. The disparity between the mother she had imagined and the mother she had was a chasm that was beginning to crack her spirit. When Iris was about to start elementary school, she gathered her courage and asked Lila for money to buy books. Lila wouldn't give it. Leo grew angry. "I give you so much money every month. Where is it all going? You don't make that much. Look at how much the guy next door brings home." "If there's no money, then there's no money," Lila shot back, her voice defensive and sharp. Leo, furious, raised his hand to hit her. It was the first time Iris had seen such raw violence in his eyes. Iris jumped in the way, a small shield. "Dad, don't hit Mom. I can collect trash myself to pay for school books." The argument ended with the family splitting in bitter silence. True to her word, Iris started running around the neighborhood every day after that, collecting cans and bottles from garbage bins, her small hands getting dirty as she saved up coin by coin for her books. But when she finally scraped together enough, hiding the small stash of cash under a loose floorboard, Lila found it. "Mom, that's the money for my books," Iris pleaded, her voice trembling as Lila pocketed the cash. "The teacher's expecting it." "What book money?" Layla sneered. "Your money is my money. Can't study without books?" "When I was in school, I didn't have money for books either. I borrowed from classmates and still did fine. Get out of my way. I'm in a good mood today. Don't make me hit you." Iris could only watch, heartbroken, as Lila walked away. She felt a flicker of something new, not just hurt but a cold, sharp sense of betrayal. But she still refused to accept the truth, telling herself it was all her own fault that her mother didn't love her because she wouldn't give her money. Lila's gambling spiraled further out of control. The small losses became big ones. The arguments with Leo became constant, screaming matches that echoed through their thin-walled apartment, with Iris huddling in a corner, hands over her ears. Eventually, Lila even lost the family's shabby rented room. When her debtors, hard-faced men with cold eyes, closed in, she panicked. Iris watched as her mother grabbed the last valuables in the home, a small television and the cheap silver locket Leo had given Iris on her last birthday, and prepared to run. "Mom," Iris asked, her small voice filled with terror. "Where are you going?" "Get out of my way." Lila shoved her aside. "If I don't leave now, it'll be too late. They'll kill me." "Mom," Iris whispered, the truth dawning on her with horrifying clarity. "Are you leaving me?" Lila paused at the door, turning back for a single final glance. There was no love in her eyes, only a frantic need for survival. "Keeping you has already ruined my whole life. Why the hell would I want you?" And with that, she was gone. Iris stood there, alone in the middle of the empty, dusty room. The sound of the slamming door echoed in the silence. She called Leo, her voice a numb whisper, telling him to come back. But soon after he arrived, the door burst open. It wasn't Lila. It was a group of debt collectors. They threw their meager belongings into the hall and shoved the two of them out, changing the locks. They were homeless. After my own college entrance exams, I donated all the money I had originally planned to use to sponsor Lila and Leo, plus a significant portion of my allowance and a bonus from my parents, to create a new scholarship fund for high-achieving students. A few of my friends, when they heard about it, also donated generously. The school even held a small ceremony. It was a clean, public severance, and it felt good. I went to university, and after graduation, just like in my previous life, I took over the family company. But this time, armed with decades of experience and foresight, I navigated the business world with an ease that stunned my board of directors. I made bold, prescient investments and avoided pitfalls I remembered all too well. The Vance empire didn't just thrive. It expanded, its roots growing deeper and its branches wider than ever before. I built my own life, separate from the ghost of my past. I enjoyed my wealth and my freedom, the shadow of Leo and Lila a distant, fading nightmare. One day, years later, my assistant's voice came through the intercom, laced with a hint of distaste. "Ms. Vance, there's a man and a child here to see you. They're rather insistent. They say you know them. His name is Leo." Cold, smooth smile touched my lips. So they had finally crawled out of the woodwork. I had been waiting for this. "Send them up," I instructed, my voice calm. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of my corner office, looking down at the city that was, in many ways, mine. When the door opened, I turned slowly. The sight was almost pitiable. Leo looked decades older than he was. His clothes were worn and thin, his face etched with lines of hardship and defeat. And beside him was Iris. She was painfully thin, her clothes tattered and too small. Her face, which should have been round with childhood, was gaunt and covered in faint, yellowing bruises. She favored one leg when she walked, a slight but noticeable limp. The moment her eyes met mine, the bitterness in them was so potent it seemed to sour the air. This was not a child's gaze. It was the look of Clara, my betrayer. "This is all your fault," she said, her young voice layered with an ancient resentment. "You ruined my dad and my mom. They shouldn't have ended up like this. You already had the lesson from your past life. Why still refuse to give them money?" I smiled. My adopted daughter had returned, and her entitlement had only festered in the gutter. "Isn't this what you wanted this time?" I asked pleasantly. "I never interfered." "Liar," she spat. "If it weren't for you, Mom wouldn't hate Dad or me. In my last life, she was willing to die for me. Dad said Mom loved him. Mom was a gentle, beautiful woman. If she were alive, she'd definitely be kind to me. But now she's just a useless gambler. It's all because of you that she became like this." I couldn't help but laugh, a soft, chilling sound. "So now it's my fault she got into gambling? And what exactly can you do about it? Besides, why would she love you? You ruined her future. Just like you, she's been romanticizing things that never actually happened. Of course, she thinks she'd be better off without you, so yes, you feel justified in hating me, but in that case, don't you think she'd hate you too?" Iris's face went a pasty white. My words had struck the fragile core of her delusion. She lowered her head, holding back tears of rage and shame. Leo, seeing how sharply I was dismantling their narrative, pulled Iris closer. "Iris, hurry and apologize to your mom." He looked at me, his eyes pleading, but I could see the calculation behind them. "Samantha, I was wrong. For the child's sake, can't you forgive us?" Iris looked at me with pure hatred, but on the surface she behaved with a twisted obedience. "I'm sorry, Mom. Mom, I was wrong. Please forgive me. I'll take good care of you from now on." Even now, at rock bottom, they were still clinging to their delusions, still trying to play the same old game. "You two really have something wrong with your heads," I said, my voice flat and final. "Why should I accept your apology?" Leo, seeing my unyielding attitude, actually seemed irritated, as if I were the one being unreasonable. "Samantha, stop being so stubborn. If you don't leave your property to Iris, who else would you give it to? You're not going to have children. Who would even marry you? And even if you adopted someone else, the inheritance would still go to an outsider. So why not give it to Iris? She calls you Mom after all. In your last life, you raised her for so many years. Could you really bear to see her suffer out there? Don't go too far. We've already apologized. If we can go back to the way things were, I promise I'll treat you well this time." Iris lifted her head and glared at me, the mask of obedience slipping. "That's right. Keep this up. And when I inherit the estate, I'll throw you in a nursing home. You've got no children of your own. Wouldn't you have to rely on me? Everything in your family will be mine. If you treat me better now, I'll remember your kindness." He wasn't wrong about one thing. I truly didn't plan to have children or adopt again. The very idea was repulsive. But I smiled at the two ungrateful wolves in front of me. Leo, you're right that I don't plan to have kids, and I'm not adopting anymore either. Leo's eyes lit up. A smug, triumphant smile tugged at his lips. He thought he had one. He thought I was admitting defeat. Until I added, but ever since I came back, I've asked my parents for a sibling. My little brother and sister are already in kindergarten. My family's wealth doesn't need you to inherit it. You're dreaming too big, and it's not going to happen. Color drained from Leo's face. He shot to his feet, panic flashing in his eyes. That's impossible. How could you do this? What about Iris? What about me? Iris's expression twisted with primal fear. The last pillar of her imagined future crumbled to dust. Mom, how could you give my money away? I was wrong. I'll never do it again. Please, please don't abandon me. You're lying, right? You're just saying that to scare me. To shatter their fantasy once and for all, I picked up my phone and made a video call. In moments, two cheerful, bright-eyed faces filled the screen. Big sis, they chimed in unison. When are you coming home? I miss you so much. Me too. I miss you more than he does. No, I'm the one who misses you the most. The voices of my little brother and sister rang out clearly in the plush silence of my office. Leo and Iris went completely pale, their faces drained of the last vestiges of hope. Proof was irrefutable. Their last desperate gamble had failed. Called security. Throw them out. They tried to resist, Leo shouting about fairness and Iris screaming curses that were far too old for her body, but they were no match for the professional guards. They were dragged away, their cries fading into the elevator shaft. Then I made one more call. I passed their location to the debt collectors who were still hunting for Lila. Take good care of the two of them, I said softly. Especially the man. From then on, they could only live their lives running. The world did not become kind to Leo and Iris after they were thrown from my office. If anything, it became sharper, more brutal. The debt collectors I had pointed in their direction were not gentle men. They were sharks who had caught the scent of blood, and Leo was the only tangible asset left connected to Lila's debts. Their life became a frantic, rootless scramble. They moved from one grimy, pay-by-the-week motel to another, always one step ahead of the thugs who would show up to demand payment with fists and threats. Leo's already meager earning potential evaporated. No one would hire a man who looked so haunted and desperate, who had to leave at a moment's notice. Iris, who housed the mind of my once pampered daughter, was forced to grow up in the most squalid conditions imaginable. The memories of her previous life, of private tutors, designer clothes, and a future as the heiress to the Vance empire, were a constant, torturous mockery. The disparity between what she felt she deserved and the reality of scavenging for food in dumpsters was a psychological acid that ate away at her sanity. She began to blame Leo, not just for their circumstances, but for the fundamental flaw in his plan. You said she would have to take me back, she would shriek at him in the darkness of another rented room. You said I was her only heir. You're useless. A failure. Leo, broken and hollowed out, had no defense. The man who had once plotted a multi-million-dollar inheritance from a rooftop had been reduced to a trembling wreck. The memories of his past life were no longer a weapon. They were a curse, a gallery of every luxury he had lost. The final blow came when he managed to land a short-lived dishwashing job, only to be recognized by the manager, a man who had once been a junior executive at a company Leo had presided over in his previous life. The public humiliation, the sneer, the "how the mighty have fallen" comment shattered the last of his spirit. He couldn't take it anymore. The running, the fear, the hunger, the weight of his daughter's contempt, and the ghost of the life he had thrown away. One night, in a particularly foul motel room that smelled of mildew and despair, he gave up. He left a brief, incoherent note blaming me for everything, and then he hanged himself with a belt from the room's flimsy closet. When Iris found him, something in her finally snapped. The last tether to any kind of reality, however grim, was severed. I had someone retrieve the body. There was no funeral. I had his remains unceremoniously cremated, and just as he had done to me in another lifetime, I had his ashes dumped into a foul, stinking cesspit on the outskirts of the city. The symmetry was perfect. The circle was complete. As for Iris, she was truly alone now. The debt collectors, finding Leo dead and of no more use, lost interest in her. But by then it was too late. The damage was irreversible. The young girl, haunted by the consciousness of a bitter old woman, wandered out into the streets and never really came back. Her mind broke cleanly. She became a fixture on the streets, a ghost child with wild, unseeing eyes. She would wander the affluent districts, the ones she remembered from her past life, approaching well-dressed women and tugging on their sleeves. "Mom," she would ask, her voice a hollow echo. "Mom, are you my mom? I'll be good. I promise." She lived in a perpetual heartbreaking present, forever searching for the mother she had idealized and then lost twice over, first to death and then to her own cruel nature. She was a living monument to their greed and my vengeance. With Leo and Iris gone from my life in every way that mattered, a profound and quiet peace settled over me. The frantic, burning need for revenge that had fueled my second youth had been satisfied, leaving behind not emptiness but a serene clarity. I had purged the poison of my first life. I continued to lead the Vance Corporation, but my drive was different now. It was no longer about proving a point or securing a legacy out of fear. It was about building something robust and beautiful for its own sake. I enjoyed the challenge, the chess game of international business, but I kept it in perspective. It was a part of my life, not the entirety of it. I traveled to places I had only ever seen in reports. I cultivated hobbies I never had time for before: painting, learning the cello, sailing. I enjoyed the freedom that my wealth and foresight afforded me, the freedom to simply live without the shadow of betrayal looming over me. I watched with a deep, quiet joy as my younger brother and sister grew. I made a conscious effort to be a real part of their lives, not a distant benefactor sister. I read them bedtime stories over video call when I was away, attended their school plays, and helped them with their science projects. I was determined that they would know family as a source of unwavering support, not a nest of vipers. When my brother Ethan showed a keen, sharp mind for finance, I mentored him myself. When my sister Amelia revealed a passionate, almost poetic love for our brand's history and narrative, I gave her the reins to our global marketing division. They were not my heirs in a grim, obligatory sense. They were my partners, my family, the vibrant, trustworthy future I had ensured. The years passed, smooth and golden. When Ethan turned 30, a confident and brilliant leader in his own right, I knew it was time. I called him and Amelia into my office, the same one where I had confronted Leo and Iris a lifetime ago. "It's yours," I said simply, pushing a folder across the desk. "The company. The foundation. All of it. I'm stepping down." They were stunned, of course. They protested, saying I was too young, that I was the heart of the empire. I laughed, a genuine light sound. "I've been the CEO of this company for the better part of 2 lifetimes," I said, which was true in a way only I could understand. "It's your turn. I have a vineyard in Tuscany I've been neglecting, and a cello that deserves more of my attention." Transition was seamless. The business press wrote glowing profiles about the Vance dynasty and its smooth transfer of power to the incredibly capable next generation. There was no intrigue, no coup, only a family passing the torch with love and respect. Now, as I write this, I am sitting on the terrace of my villa, looking out over the rolling hills of my vineyard. The sun is warm on my skin, and the air smells of earth and ripening grapes. In the distance, I can hear the faint, melodic strains of Amelia practicing the violin. She had taken it up after I started the cello. I have everything. I have my health, my freedom, my peace. I have a family that loves me and a legacy that is secure in the best possible hands. The ghosts of the past have been silenced, their ashes scattered to the filth where they belong. My first life was a gilded cage, ending in a brutal murder. My second life was a strategic war ending in total victory. But this is living. This is the life I was truly meant to have, earned not by luck, but by the ruthless pruning of the poisonous weeds that had once threatened to choke it. And it is sweeter than I ever could have imagined. The end.